Where's missing? Oh, John's missing. So anyway, as I explained at the beginning of the first session, we've got Les Payne with us today. For those who don't know Les was the Rotherham United reporter for the Green Inn. He's a Rotherham United fan, and he's currently does stuff for iFollow. But I'll let him tell you about that. So there's just somebody joining up now, so I'll just hang on a second. So Les, how did you get into journalism?
First of all, thanks, Keith, for inviting me.
It's a pleasure.
I enjoyed it when I was at your meeting at Crystal Peaks 2 or 3 years ago. I seem to recognise a couple of faces. Brian Coddington. Hi, Brian.
Hi, Les.
I would swear that's Dave Tipper.
It is, but
sex.
Yeah, just using.
Although the beard wouldn't suggest so.
That's his Sunday name.
We've all got to have a disguise.
So, and hello to the rest of you. Very quickly, I just always wanted to be a football reporter, sports reporter, really. I used to write imaginary football reports when I was a kid. And after leaving school at 16 and working in the steelworks on Brightside at English Steel for 3 years, I managed to get a job at the Rotherham Advertiser, covering both news and sport, which got my first involvement covering Rotherham United. I did the first game for them in February 1969, so you can work out how many years ago that is this month. Watford away. The manager of Watford was Ken Furphy.
Wow.
The Blades fans will remember. It was one of only 4 games in the country because of snow. But Watford was at the top of what's now League One, and he desperately wanted the game on. And Rotherham had to go down, went by train, met by a coach at St Pancras, which took us to Watford, and the players had to get changed on the coach, and I had to help by taking bits of tile and various things down the coach to these players. You can imagine it. I was 19 at the time, just before my 20th birthday. So there I was with my supposed heroes, really, and I was helping them to get dressed. To get changed. Imagine what that was like for a young lad at 19 who'd been stood on terraces supporting them and watching them. His first game. Lost 5-1, and it was on Match of the Day. So, yes, Dave.
Who would the players have been then? Your heroes at that time playing for Rotherham?
Crikey. 69, and that just Dave Watson had just.
Dave Watson, yeah, I'm wondering, yeah.
Yeah, he joined. He played his first game in midfield at QPR. Tommy Docherty was the first manager I ever got sent to see, and you know what a big figure he was in the game. He came to Rotherham, which was a massive surprise. I always said, and I wrote a piece the other day after he died, saying it was like Mourinho coming. Leave it after he left Chelsea, coming to manage Rotherham. And Tommy Docherty saw Watson for Notts County Reserves at Rotherham and thought he could make a centre half. And he came to Rotherham, played midfield first game at QPR. Rotherham lost 6-0. And his third game, he switched him to centre half for a FA Cup tie against Wolves, who were then in the, we'll call it Premier League. And centre forward for Wolves was Derek Dougan. And Watson totally and utterly played out of the game. Rotherham produced a shock. They were bottom of the Championship, then we'll call it that. And Rotherham beat them 1-0. And really did.
Sneaky sod, Derek Dugan.
I never look back after that.
Dirty
Yeah.
Dugan.
Dirty Dugan.
Was it? Yeah, right. Okay. Well, he never got a chance to do anything on that occasion.
Good.
That was really my start in the reporting. I sort of did Rotherham games. What happened first off, I tended to do the away games and somebody else did the home games, primarily because they didn't want to do the travelling around the country, which didn't bother me really. I quite enjoyed it initially, and then got into it, and that's how I started out. But I'm glad I had the grounding of news as well. Talking about grounding, it was a good grounding at English Steel because I was only 16, so the first time really I came across adults. You got United fans and Wednesday fans, and I think I told this line last time when I went into. I worked in the South Machine Shop, and took me around, and he pointed and he pointed the bloke in the corner, and he said, "Oh, that's Cliff." He said, "He's a big Wednesdayite." He says he doesn't eat bacon. And I've no idea what he was talking about. I didn't realise that. But we're talking 1965, 66 then. And I got introduced to the rivalry. So I used to go around the machine shop, and one bloke could have United regalia on his little hut, and another one would have Wednesday, and there'd be banter all the time. So that was my first real proper introduction to Sheffield football rivalry, if you like, outside my school days.
Okay.
Yeah.
We both started at English Steel at the same time then.
Is that right? Yeah, there you are.
Les, I worked in the South Machine Shop and I started in there in 1965 myself.
Did you indeed?
Jack Brough was the manager.
Ernest Bullock.
He was there as well.
I think Ernest Bullock, if I remember right, spotted me playing in a departmental cricket match and said, company said, "I want you to be playing for the company cricket team." So I suppose when somebody like that said it, you'd no choice really, had you? So put me in second 11 or something like that to start. I was only 16, of course, 17, whatever.
Yeah. So how did you move on to the green then?
I'd done. It was late '89. I'd been, in effect, what you call headhunted now, don't they? Sounds fancy. And I thought it was time to move on. Having done my time as sports editor at the Advertiser, which is a weekly paper in Rotherham, as probably some of you know. And I got headhunted, went to the Star and Green, and best thing I ever did, because it gave me the opportunity, not just to cover Rotherham. I was covering Rotherham at Oxford, all sports, but I was getting the opportunity to cover United, cover Wednesday, and all the others, because I was sort of class. In addition to being a sports writer, I was like the second, what we call the second man. So when the Tony Pritchett, the Sheffield United reporter, was off, they'd send me down to see Dave Bassett or Howard Kendall or Steve Bruce or whoever it was, and I might get the chance to cover a United game, which I did on quite a few occasions. And likewise Wednesday, when the Sheffield Wednesday reporter was away, I used to get the chance to go to cover Wednesday games or go down and do their press conferences. So it was great for me because I just loved football. Likewise Barnsley, the Barnsley guy was off and I was available, I'd go into Barnsley. So I got a breadth of football coverage, plus all the other sports as well. Cricket, interview Boycott, who I found quite amenable actually. All the reputation about him, and I found him very, very, very friendly. I don't. He was talking about his book, but he was very good.
And absolutely hated him.
Absolutely, and I think there was a hate figure, and I can understand why. But I can only say, as I found him on that particular day,
Yeah.
I went with a little bit of trepidation because when you hear about people and you hear about the disdain that they have and the way that they can issue, particularly if you're not sure of your subject. But on this particular occasion, I was fairly sure. I told him I was a Yorkshire member. That no longer applied at that time, but that seemed to pacify him a little bit. I did okay. But I can understand why, and I know why, that he wasn't particularly popular with with a lot of people. Rather like Coley today. Coley's a love-hate relationship, and he's not extremely popular for the way that he handles himself. And as Brian said earlier, the way that he spoke to the umpires yesterday, in my eyes, was a disgrace. Whether or not they'll suspend him, I very much doubt it, because he's the king of Indian cricket.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, just to get back to that quickly, to the Star and Green, and I just loved it, absolutely loved it, Keith. It were a wonderful experience all the way through. And just when I got there, end of '89, beginning of the '90s, was of course a great time for Sheffield Sport. United, I think, went up to the Premier League, didn't they, not long after. Wednesday in the Premier League, they got that 92, 93. Wednesday got the 2 cup finals. You got Sheffield Steelers doing really well, and you even got the Rugby League doing quite well. So it was a wonderful time for Sheffield Sport generally, and I just revelled in it.
Yeah. So, I mean, your first game where you were helping the players get changed on the coach, were there any other unusual occurrences that you came across in your travels?
I've got a message, that's all. I'm trying to think. I don't know if anybody's got any questions that they just want to throw at me. Very often that throws up an unusual story or something like that, Keith. I'm trying to think. Lots, really. I can't immediately bring one to mind. You know what it's like when you're trying to think of something.
Yeah.
And you can't immediately. I remember getting locked in toilets at Norwich, if that works. And it's one of them that went in and the door shut behind me. It was totally black. So where I managed to wee that night, I'm not quite sure. I assume it went to where it should have gone to. But when it came to getting out, I went out to try getting out the same way I'd come in, and you couldn't do that. So I'm fiddling about at the top of the door, not realising that if somebody had come in, they might have sliced my fingers off. And I thought, I'm going to be stuck in a toilet and can't get out. And fortunately, I managed to see a chink of light. You know, your eyes get used to dark. So getting locked in the toilet was one of the things that concerned me. I'm trying to think. What was there others? I don't know. Anybody's got any thoughts on?
I can remember having to lock myself in some toilets, Les.
Some of it was even to do with football. Can I ask Les just an opinion? Can I ask you a question? You mentioned Dave Bassett as someone that you obviously spoke to in your work. He is voted United's greatest ever manager. What was your opinion of Dave Bassett and the way he worked with you on in that time?
Dave Bassett was brilliant, and I can understand why the players played for him. I thought he was a great man manager, and of course he got United playing a certain way. Everybody knew the job, everybody knew the role, but whenever I got to deal with Dave Bassett, he was great. He gave you time. He was friendly. If you went down to see him, he always treated you with respect as well. There was never a moment when I thought that, oh, this is not the regular guy. The couple of minutes and off you go. I enjoyed that. The fortunate thing about was, I don't know if you remember or not, they used to do managers' columns in the Star.
Yeah.
they came out on a Saturday, and that required the reporter to go down and see the manager, usually on a Friday, and after training, go into his office, spend some time with him, and then write it up afterwards. And there were a few interesting ones from there. I remember Ron Atkinson asking me about a young player at Rotherham. He said, "You cover Rotherham, don't you?" "Yeah, I do." Yeah. I said, "What about Sean Goodwin? What's he like?" And rather surprised me because he was a top manager asking a, reported about a player elsewhere. And he said, "Can you compare him with?" And he compared him with the player. I remember going down to see Trevor Francis, and I went down on the Friday about, I think it was about 12 o'clock, probably 11 or something like that, and did his column with him for the following day's paper. And Trevor always liked you to send a copy of it to his secretary, and he could look at it, and he would always change something, just one word, even if it's only one word. He always changed something. "No, that's fine, that's okay." Anyway, this particular day, I sent it to Norma, the secretary, Norma Lane, and a bit later on, she came back that Friday afternoon. "No, it's fine, it's all okay, that's fine, yeah, that's all right, let it go." So that's it, went in the paper. The next morning, I happened to be on duty, and word came through that Trevor Francis had been sacked. And I'm pretty certain that at the time I saw him, he had no idea that he was going to get sacked. And that was just an interesting one. No indication at all, no hint or anything like that. But that was a real, if you think about it, we all like to be in with managers, wouldn't we, in the same room, chatting about football. You got to chat about football. And Dave Bassett was one of those. He liked to talk and chat, and he was very good on the gossip front, and they want to know what was going off at other clubs. And it was. I consider myself very, very fortunate to be able to have that access.
Thank you, Les. Thank you.
Who's your favourite Rotherham player that you, in the time that you've covered?
I think Jerry Forrest, a right back who they signed from non-league. When he was about 21, I think. He was a wonderful player. I got to know him personally, and one Saturday, Rotherham had played at Gillingham, and it was first game of the season, red hot day, drawn 0 apiece. So coming back, we used to travel on the team coach then. We were privileged to come back on the team coach with the team. Probably might have just persuaded you to be a bit more liberal with your words, I suppose, and not too hard on the criticism. Anyway, came back, and Jerry was involved. "What you doing?" I said, "Well, we've got a game in the morning." I was involved with a team that played in the Meadowhall League at the time, initially Romarsh United, and became Romarsh Horse and Jockey, playing in the top level of the Premier there. And I said, "Well, we've got a game in the morning." I said, "But for the first time ever, we look like being short." He says, "Oh, I'll play for you." I said, "No." "I'll come and play for you." I said, "Well, I said, we're short." I says, "Are you sure?" "No," he says, "We lived at Mexborough." He said, "What time do you kick off?" I says, "Well, it'll be 11 o'clock. I said, "Tell you what, we'll pick you up at 10:15. He says, "Pick me up at 10:15 outside Montague Arms at Mexborough." So I didn't drive at time, so my dad picked me up. So I've got to go and pick up Jerry Forrest. He says, "Yeah." So he took into my rain, and he stood there, huddled under Montague. I thought, he'll not be there, and he was there. He says, "I ain't got my boots." I says, "Well, I'll have to borrow mine then, Jerry." So we took him in the dressing room, and we said, "Here we are, lads, we've got a new signing for today, Jerry Wood." So,
Geriatric.
Ringer.
Jerry played right half. I had to play in somebody else's boots because mine fitted Jerry, but the others didn't. So I think I played in 1 size 7 and 1 size 9. I can't blame that on my performance, though. We won, actually, and after the game, there was a guy there. Some of you might remember him from local football, John Colley, who I think was involved with Marsh Welfare at the time. And he went up to Jerry after the game and he said, now then, pal, he said, only if you fancy a game on a Saturday. And Jerry, he said, I'm sorry about that. I work on Saturdays. Which in effect was true, like, you know.
Yeah.
But no, Jerry went. He did eventually go to Southampton. I think he went a couple of years too late. He went to Southampton and did play in the top flight for them. And interestingly, he got to Southampton, and as you probably know, Jerry Forrest and John Breckin formed a very successful full-back partnership at Rotherham United. And Jerry had only been there, I think it was probably his first year, and he was talking to Breck, and he said, I don't know why they signed me down here. He says they've got a good young right back who's going to be a good player. He says they could have brought him. He says you want to have a look at him. He says, oh, what they call him? He says Chris Wilder. Chris Wilder, and Rotherham didn't take up that opportunity. Of course, Chris came to Sheffield United, didn't he, as a player?
Yeah.
So Rotherham could have signed Chris Wilder before they did do, and Chris, of course, played more games than anywhere else for Rotherham United. I think he played 150, scored a few goals, and excuse me, a lot of penalties as well. And as John Breckin says in his book, which is out very shortly, and I'm sure you'll be desperate to buy it, seeing as it's being written by somebody you might be looking at now. Which is on the fact that Chris Wilder, when he came to Rotherham, was one of the leaders in the dressing room. And Breck says in the book that he's not surprised that Chris went on to have a successful managerial career, and that he was always up for the social events that they had, the arts events. But anything that, knowing Chris obviously, but he put himself about, coming from Sheffield to events that Breck might have organised, a darts night or something like that, or a race night. Chris was always involved in that, and he said he was a great guy to have at the club. So,
Les, the Says Les column, where did that come out of?
I started a column in the Advertiser called In the Spotlight, rather than the Spotlight, in the Spotlight, and that sort of went on from there. So when I got to the Star, they wanted me to do a column. The column in the Spotlight column began because I was able to give my opinion on things, so you do that. The Says Les column, they wanted that. The interesting thing about the Says Les column was that it seemed to go down quite well. Had it not done, the editor would have stopped it. But it did seem, even though I say it myself, it did seem to be quite well read and quite popular in many respects.
Yeah.
I think one of the most, one thing I once compared United fans and Wednesday fans and the difference between them. And that created more, just before it created more reaction than anything I ever did. And it was an amazing response. Even Neil Warnock mentioned something in his column in the Independent. But the column I did, the Says Les, I got a call one day from a guy who said, have you entered the journalist awards thing? I said, no, I don't go in for awards and what have you. He said, well, would you be thinking of entering? I said, no, not really. He said, do you think perhaps you ought to? I said, well, so I thought he's hinting that I should do. And what had happened was somebody at the start had sent in an entry to these awards. It was the North BT National Awards, and it was a regional thing, the entire Northeast. And somebody had sent one in, and one of the judges had seen some of my columns and another of my pieces on the back and said, this should be entered. So I entered it, and it came second. Overall, it in the entire north of England, and it was beaten by, you probably remember it, Gerard Houllier had a heart attack, didn't he, when coming in a Liverpool game?
Yeah.
And a guy got an exclusive for that, a guy called Ian Ross, and that won and went down to the national, which was all the regional winners, down to the national. So I came second, which was, the fact is that somebody had actually seen my work and recommended it to be submitted to the judges. So I felt rather proud about that, even though I never had it. And the editor, I wasn't in the editor's clique at this time, or whatever. He had a certain clique. And he came up to me and he said, by the way, he didn't go to the awards. He always went to the others, and this one he didn't go. And he came up to me and said, well done on that achievement. Oh, thank you. He said, I didn't know you'd entered. I said, I didn't. He said, what? I said, I didn't. Somebody else must have entered you then, and walked off. And that was all. That was all I got from him.
High praise.
Who was it?
Not the best man management that I've ever come across. But
What was his name?
What was whose name?
The editor.
Peter Charlton.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't remember him. So, who were the guys that you worked with on the sport? Any of them stand out?
Tony Pritchett was a big character, of course.
Yeah.
And he was great. I loved it on the sports end. I think there were 12, 13, 14 when I first started. And it was absolutely wonderful, the banter and everything. But Tony was the noisiest, the loudest, and sometimes the funniest. I thoroughly enjoyed it on there. Paul Thompson was doing Sheffield Wednesday, Ian Vickers did the Greenham, and it was they used to have a racing man, Keith Hamer, who was good. But it was for anybody that loves sport, it was just wonderful to get in. Just think about it. You talk about sport all day. You come on and you guys talk sport every Tuesday or whatever you do, or get together in your meetings. Hopefully, you'll be able to do that later in the year. Talk sport. Well, we were doing that all day, and getting the sport coming into you, speaking to managers, get the inside gossip and everything like that. You get the inside track on transfers, on everything. You know, it was a dream world to me, to be perfectly honest. Kids.
What was the biggest scoop that you got?
Biggest scoop. Just from a Rotherham point of view, there were perhaps two in effect. Was one when I got tipped off about Steve Evans. Now, it didn't come from within Rotherham United. It came from outside, but from somebody I knew who just rang me up out of the blue. He was working elsewhere in the country and said, hey, he said, Steve Evans is going to be next Rotherham manager. I said, is he? And he told me how he knew, and I put it in the paper. So I put it in the Star. They put it on the back page of the Star, back page lead, Steve Evans. Now, Steve Evans, of course, had a great reputation convicted fraudster, which
An
you
all-round
might say
horrible.
crook,
All
but
round good
convicted
bloke.
fraudster, and a terrible reputation in the game. You know what happened at Boston with Fiddle and all that sort of thing. So I've got horrendous abuse from Rotherham United fans, called a traitor, and said that I was working against Rotherham United for putting this manager in place, and he's in the Sheffield paper now, so he's not a proper Rotherham fan. All that rubbish, just my stuff on social media today, and I treated it like I do social media. I like the water off a duck's back. I just ignored it, and people said, "I've seen what they're saying about it." I said, I couldn't care a monkeys. And that's the only way I could treat it. You can't start worrying about people calling you a traitor and saying you're not this and you're not that and what have you. And of course, Steve Evans did get the job. The other one as well was when Ian Porterfield left. There were two. He got the Ian Porterfield. I went down to see Ian Porterfield. He'd been manager of the month. Rotherham had got promotion, if you remember. United had gone down. The Don Givens missed penalty. Rotherham had gone up into the Championship. And Porterfield had...
Eddie Days.
And Porterfield, I went to see him, did his column, The Advertiser, and he was manager of the month. So I went into his office and I said, "Hey, congratulations. I'm well pleased for you." And he looked at me, he looked aside to John McSeveny, who was sitting there, and he went, "I've no choice. Look, when an opportunity like this comes up, you've got to take it." And I'm the one then puzzled looking at it. I'm then puzzled because I'm thinking, what? And he went, "Anyway, how do you know? How do you know that I'm going to Sheffield United? I haven't told Cherry." Well, I didn't know. I was congratulating him on being manager of the month. He thought I was congratulating him because I knew he was going to Sheffield United, but I didn't. So he just told me. So I went back to the office and said, "Well, we've got a scoop here. Porterfield's leaving. He's going to Bramall, taking over Sheffield United." And they went, "No, he isn't. No. It's on back page at Star. George Kerr's getting a job." And Tony Pritchett had done a story saying that George Kerr was the next Blades boss. I said, "Well, he's not." I said, "Porterfield told me he's manager of Sheffield United." And I had to convince them that I was right, Tony Pritchett was wrong. So I got lucky on that one. And quickly for his successor, we'd heard by this time Anton Johnson, another crook, by the way. A nice one, a charming one, whatever. He said we're going to have a big name as the next manager. Well, we learned on the Thursday that the manager would be appointed the next day, and the editor said, "Right, we need to find out who it is, and there's a space on the front page that needs filling by 4:45. So I did all the ringing round. Everybody sworn to secrecy. Nobody would say a word. Nobody knew who it was. There'd been nothing in any papers, any nationals or anything. And it's getting towards sort of 4 o'clock. I'm getting short on time. And I thought, well, they're coming up. So I rang a couple of hotels, and I got to a hotel in Rotherham, one of the big ones. And I said, have you got Mr. Johnson, Anton Johnson? Yes, I think we have, love. Yeah, just a minute. I said, what time's he getting here tonight? Just a minute. And this is exactly what happened. She went, Maisie, what time's Mr. Johnson and Mr. Hughes getting here tonight? They're eating at 7, are they? Right, okay. Mr. Johnson and Mr. Hughes will be here for 6, and they're eating at 7. I said, "All right, thanks ever so much." I said, Anton, I said, that'll be, I said, the Emily News. Yes, that's right, Emily News and Anton Johnson. I said, oh, I said, that'll be nice. I said, it'd be good if make Emlyn the manager. Yes, yeah, he's lovely, isn't he, Emlyn? She said. You know, you need luck in all sorts of spheres, don't you? You need, you know, you miss it too short and it goes in bottom corner. It's lucky. Through goalkeeper's legs, you didn't mean it. It's lucky. Well, I went through goalkeeper's legs. I got lucky, and I got it. And the next, and it was in Emily News going to be manager. And I must tell you, I went out with a mate that night. I rang a mate of mine up. I went out for a drink, and I was pumped I was pumped up that night because I got this exclusive. Nobody else had got it. Nowhere, anywhere near. The next day, I went down, and somebody said to me, as we were walking down to the press conference, "Bloody hell," he said, "how did you get that?" Well, I didn't tell anybody. I never told anybody. In fact, until I started doing talks very, very late in my career, the truth and the luck that you need sometimes. But it was the fact that I put it in. I rung around and done things and what have you.
Right.
Yes,
Okay,
Keith.
Les, we're less than a minute, so to wrap this one up now. I'll keep sending you the links, and next time you want to join us.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Les. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tell us more.
Thanks, Les.
Thanks, everybody.
I'll come on again.
See you.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Aye.